All right, today we are going to be talking about reason. And this is actually a difficult topic to talk about because it's a it's a faculty that humans evolved, this ability to think, and we're actually going to be analyzing the ability to think. We're thinking about thinking. So normally when we think about things, we think about things that are external to us, the things that are happening around us. But today we're really going to focus on internal thinking, like our actual thoughts and the idea of thinking and how it can help with sobriety and fighting your addiction. So this is not an easy topic to talk about, but I'm going to try to make it as interesting as I possibly can. So humans have basically evolved from animals in their ability to think. We have something called the cerebral cortex, which is wrapped around the grooves of our brain at the very surface, and it allows us to contemplate things. And normally when you have an animal, like let's say for example a cat, they can just think in black or white, in the sense that if they see a mouse, they think good, and if they see a fox, they think bad and they run away. And humans are a lot more complicated than that. We have evolved to be able to pick up nuance, and what we notice is that things may seem like they're bad and end up being good for us, and things that seem like they're good can end up being bad for us. And so we're able to actually think and analyze deeply about things to make determinations that are deeper than their superficial appearances. So we are going to be talking about this, and in particular we're going to be focusing it on our internal ability to think, on the faculty of thinking itself. And that faculty we call reasoning. And so we are still on the reasoning choice chapter, or marble, I should say, of the program here. And the purpose of reasoning, let's start off with talking about the purpose of reasoning. The purpose of reasoning is to determine which opinions that we have, that are, which ones are good and which ones are false, or I should say which ones are correct and which ones are false. And then we can take that determination of that and pull away the ones that are false and replace them with the correct ones. And reason does more than that as well, because reason tells us, it decides the motivation we have to act on something or to not act on something. So, for example, a cat, if a fox comes out of the bush and a cat sees the fox, then it's just going to run. It's not going to think about anything. But for us, when we, as humans, if a person comes after you and you actually can think, do I want to attack this person? Do I want to defend myself, or should I run? Should I fight or should I flight? And we have this ability to determine the motivations we have, whether to act on something or to not act on something. And that also separates us from animals. And it's important for addiction because you can think about whether or not you want to smoke a cigarette or whether or not you don't want to smoke this cigarette. And reasoning gives us the ability to actually think about that and to make that determination and to think about our opinions, whether or not that smoking that cigarette is the right thing to do. Is it good for our health or is it bad for our health? And to determine if we're going to act on that and open up that pack of cigarettes and light it up and smoke it. So reasoning is very important for addiction. It also determines our desires and our aversions about things. So we think that the things we like and don't like, they're just naturally like that, but that's actually not true. You can actually trick yourself in a way or think through things to determine whether or not you like something or don't like something. And you can change the things that you like for example, smoking cigarettes. You can actually start to change your thought patterns and determine, hey, maybe I actually don't like smoking cigarettes as much as I think I do. Maybe it makes my breath terrible, and maybe this is really bad for me, and maybe I actually hate the fact that I'm smoking cigarettes right now. And so you can actually change your desires and change your aversions using reasoning. So it's the most powerful faculty that we have, and it's actually just the most powerful tool we could ever imagine. There's that saying that says, the pen is mightier than the sword. And that saying, it's not really the pen that's mighty. It's not like you're going to stab someone with a pen like the sword. But the pen is mighty because it's the ability to write down our thoughts. And so with our thoughts, we can have like superpowers. You can do all sorts of things, and especially we can crush our addiction over time with them and become sober people with all sorts of successes and accomplishments in life. People we can be proud about. So what you do with reasoning, the purpose of it is to take the opinions that are incorrect and replace them with the correct ones. But first you have to analyze them and determine if the thoughts you're having are right, if the impressions you're having are right. And when you start to replace the wrong ones with correct ones, that's what develops wisdom over time. And that's how people become wise. So if you can make yourself wise over time, then you become a lot more harder. You can actually be harder in life, and it's harder for other people to influence you. Because when we're unwise and foolish, we're easily persuaded by other people around us. So if you're unwise and if you're foolish and you're hanging out with a bunch of people who are smoking joints around you or using drugs or sharing fentanyl or drinking too heavily, then you're just going to join in because you think that since they're doing it, they're right. And so you should do that too. And that's the great thing to do. And when you're wise and you actually have the ability to reason and you have a strong muscle of reasoning, then you can even be around all those people and you can think to yourself, hold on a second, those people are not right. Just because they're all doing it doesn't mean that it's the right thing to do. Just because they're telling me it's a good thing and I should do it doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. And you can think to yourself, well, how do I know if it is the right thing to do or not the right thing to do? And so you can reason through it to make your own conclusions, and suddenly you're not so easily persuaded by society and you become your own individual, somebody with your own free will. But if you're not wise, then you're just going to get affected by everything around you. And we all can think about, like, for example, when we're children, or, we're not born wise. We are born without really knowing right or wrong, the difference between them. And if we're lucky, then we have parents, and our parents raise us and tell us what's right and what's wrong. But oftentimes the parents aren't 100% right or wrong and correct in that thinking either. But at least they do their best to raise us, and then we get this kind of baseline idea of right and wrong from our parenting. But we're still unwise, and so we go to school, and suddenly, and we all as addicts have memories of this, we go to school, and at some point some kid says that it's cool to smoke a cigarette, or it's cool to go get drunk, or it's cool to smoke some weed, and we think, oh, okay, and we're easily persuaded in that direction. And so we start to think that it's cool to use drugs or to go get drunk and to party hard, and there's no one there to counteract that at the time, because we're just around schoolmates to say, hold on, that's not what's cool. What's cool is if you were reading and learning new skills and adapting yourself to society in such a way that you can reason carefully and make correct decisions and choose wisely and become successful and make a lot of money so you can have a family and always be good to society, et cetera, and actually teaching us virtues and vices to give us correct reasoning and correct opinions, impressions, and judgments about things in life. So that's how most of us fall into deep addictions. It happens from an early age, and we're persuaded by those around us, particularly classmates. But as adults, and now that we're all older here and we're in a place where we're trying to get better, it is time to actually start changing our opinions and our judgments about things, including drugs and alcohol and all sorts of other things in life as well, so that we can correct what has been taught to us in an incorrect way as we were growing up. So start off by establishing to yourself what the truth is and reject the things that are false. And then if you're not sure about what's right and what's wrong, just suspend your judgment. Okay, that's how you should start. And how do you determine what is right and what is wrong? So I'm going to give you some tools for that. And the purpose of Stoicism and philosophy in general, which is what this program is based on, is to create standards to develop an understanding of what's right and what's wrong. That is the purpose of philosophy. So the first standard that you should set, and we use these standards, by the way, like a ruler to determine if something's straight or crooked in life. The first standard, well, actually, before I go into the first standard, I just want to tell you a little bit about how the Stoics back in the day, or at the time of the Stoics, there used to be bankers. And back then they had coins, and they had gold coins. And the currency was a lot different than today's worthless dollars. But back then they had gold coins. And so the bankers, they had to determine whether or not a coin was authentic or not. And they didn't have the technology we do today. So what they did is they would take coins and they would throw them at the ground, or on the table, I should say. They would hit them against the table over and over and over again. And that coin would make a sound every time it hit that table. And they could determine whether or not a coin was pure gold based on the sound, because people back then would forge coins and they would add lead or whatever, or dilute the gold into lower carats of gold. And so the banker could tell whether or not a coin was authentic and pure, or whether it was a fake just from the sound. And they did this by repeatedly hitting coins against tables all day long. And so I'm going to give you some tools right now for life to determine whether or not other people's opinions about things that you hear are pure gold or fake. And since we're in a time when we're on social media all the time, on our phones scrolling around, we hear a lot of opinions from all sorts of people. And who's to say who's right or wrong? A simple, one person's opinion is not a correct, that's not enough to decide whether or not they're right or wrong, because there's people out there saying all sorts of things that counteract the other people. So how do you determine? Here's the gold coin tests I'm giving you right now. Practice them like hitting a coin against the table over and over again. So first of all, you need to think deeply about things. Don't take things at their first initial impressions and the way they look from first appearances. Always think things through deeply on multiple levels and determine whether or not, analyze them on a deep level. That's the first thing you need to do. It's very important. The next thing you need to do is, no matter what you hear from someone, you need to be a skeptic about what they're saying to you and have some mistrust of what they are saying and what anybody says to you. Have some mistrust and skepticism, and always view things from the lens of a skeptic. Don't trust what anybody says to you, including myself right now to you. Don't trust what I'm saying either until you actually start to think it through and determine whether or not that person is correct or not. The next tool is, I want you to always hold a higher opinion of things that are good for society. In general, when something is good for society, then it's much more likely to be something that is good, and a good opinion to have, and a good behavior to have. To act on something that's good for society is generally a good thing. Is addiction a good thing? Well, let's hold it to these standards. We can think about it deeply like this. So first of all, we should be skeptical of anybody who tells us that it's fun to go get high, or it's good to get stoned all the time, or good to use drugs, and be very mistrustworthy of that kind of person in general. And then think to yourself, is it social to do drugs or to drink alcohol? Now, it may at first appear like it's social if you're ciphering a joint or a blunt around in a circle with some people, or if you're out there drinking at a bar with your friends. That may appear social, but it's actually not exactly social, because you could be using that time to hang out with other people in more productive ways, for example. Or you could socialize with those people without drinking. You don't have to drink to be social with those people. You can have a Diet Coke like I always do and go to the bar. And the drinking itself or the using is not the act of being social. That's not what's social. Being with those people might be social, but then you have to think, well, hold on a second. Is it a good idea for me to be around such people if I have a history of addiction or if I'm prone to addiction? Do I really want to be around these such folks? Is this going to cause me to relapse? Is this a risk for me, and is that risk worth taking? The next gold standard that I want you to have in life about things is I want you to be able to change your opinions about things. If someone shows you a way that's more correct, don't be stubborn in your views and be willing to change your opinion, because it is equally as free for you to change your opinion about something as it is to hold on to your current opinion. And it's a madman's mind to hold on to opinions and not be willing to change them if people are showing you a new way that's actually more worthy of your judgment and of your opinions. So be willing to change your opinions. And that's something that drug users have a lot of problem about. And I know this from my own experiences. I used to be a medical marijuana doctor. I was a specialist. I wrote a book about cannabis, and I was like one of the main doctors who was specializing in medical marijuana on the East Coast and in general in the States. It was very early. And I was using pot, and I was told that I had a marijuana problem. And I was just so stubborn about it. I refused to believe it because I was the expert. How could I have the problem? I know better than all those other people, even though they were showing me, well, look, this gave you problems with your license. This gave you problems with your family. This gave you financial issues. This is not good for your health. You look like a mess. You're stoned all the time. It's taking you away from more productive things. All the evidence was there, but I refused to change my opinion. I was like a crazy person. I just had to stay believing. It's like a schizophrenic who thinks that there's a recording device in their teeth. No matter what you tell them, they're always going to believe it. And there's something that's how schizophrenia is. Holding on to your opinions, despite people showing you a better way, is like a mental illness in some ways. So always be willing to change your opinions if you're provided a good reason to do so. The next two are some of my favorites. So in life, if you're to choose between two different things, always choose the one that provides more stability in life. This is, for example, important when it comes to choosing relationships in your life. Are you choosing somebody who is maybe going to give you a fun time in life, but they're going to give you chaos and instability? Are you choosing somebody instead who may be perhaps a little more plain, a little less excitement, but going to give you long-term stability in life, something that you can actually build a foundation off of? Always choose the option that's more stable. How do drugs affect your life? Do they create stability for you? I don't think so. We all know the answer to that. It's complete chaos. It's mayhem. Drugs are a perfect example of that, and alcohol too. Those poor alcoholics they just can't stop drinking, their lives are in chaos. It's at home, it's at work, it's internally inside their heads. They have no stability. They feel like they're about to lose it at all times. So, and this applies to all things. It's not just our sobriety and addictions, it's all things in life. Go with the more stable thing. And another thing, the next thing, which is equally one of my favorites, and so like stability, this is a ruler for you to measure things with on how good they are and how worthwhile they are, is how proud something makes you. This is how you determine whether something is good or bad. how you feel afterwards. Do you feel proud that you just smoked a cigarette or drank beer and got hammered? At the moment, maybe you might, but that's because you're inebriated and you're drunk and you're feeling, you're not your normal self. But the next day, think about it. Were you proud of doing that? If the answer is no, then that was the wrong thing to do. On the other hand, are you proud of something else, like let's say working out and going to the gym, no matter how hard that may be, or not eating some cake, or not eating pizza after you've already had a meal? Think about that. Are you going to be proud of holding back? Yes, you will be proud, because you have shown the ability, the virtue of temperance, the ability of self-control, and so you can be proud of that. And if you had that extra pizza slice, then you're probably going to feel a little shameful because you were too weak and you were overpowered by your body's urges. So that brings me to another tool here that you can use, and that's to always think about whether or not you're being affected by your body's urges. And you should never succumb to those urges. You should not be overpowered by them. Don't ever let in to your body's urges, whether it's tiredness. Don't go falling asleep on the job or taking a nap in the middle of the day, unless it's absolutely necessary. Or whether it's hunger, hold back. Don't start eating a bunch of junk food just because you're hungry. Don't let your body overpower you with the hunger. Don't let the body overpower you with any of those urges. And that's especially for all of us here watching, true of our addictions and the urges of the body for that pleasure sense. If you feel an urge, fight it as much as you can, and then you will feel proud later that you fought it and you didn't let it win, and you will feel no shame. So be careful of that. And the last thing here, the last rule in general is, actually there's two more, is first of all, always make sure that you're never doing anything in error or deceived by anything. Make sure that your opinions are, and your views and judgments are correct, and that no one's deceiving you, including yourself. But then the last one is make sure that things are worth doing. So is it worth, working and trying to fix your neighborhood stop sign all day long when the city could just come in with a worker and fix it in a half an hour? No, of course not. That's not worth your time, even though what you're doing might be good for society. Is it worth you stopping addiction? Yes, it is. Now that's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take a lot of time to push through that. But is it worthwhile? Of course it's worthwhile. It's going to be worthwhile not just for you, but it's going to be worthwhile for society as well. It's a good thing to do for society because you can be more productive towards your community and towards your family, and it's good for other people around you in the world. It's not just about you. So you see, I'm applying these various tools that the Stoics used to determine whether or not something is good or if it's not good and wrong to do. Now let's focus our reasoning from the external things to the internal things. So there is a word that I would like you to know, that we should all know, and for some reason we don't use it very often, and that's a sign that society is probably degrading a little bit right now. But the word is prudence. And prudence means the ability to use reasoning to self-govern yourself and to discipline yourself and to control yourself. Because if you can do that, if you can discipline yourself and govern yourself, then you have the ability to use that prudence to change yourself into who you choose to be. So I want you to choose to be a certain type of person. Now, first of all, we're all here because we want to get sober. So that person we're choosing to be is a sober one. But you can choose to be other types, something else as well. You can choose to be wise, like we talked about earlier. You can choose to be courageous. You can choose to be peaceful. You can choose all sorts of things. And with philosophy and stoicism, I want you to choose all the good things and start being that person now. And that's a famous quote by Marcus Aurelius. He says, stop talking about being a good man and just be one. And so with prudence, you can do that right now. Self-control, basically govern yourself and discipline yourself. Look internally into your thoughts and into your desires and what you desire, and start to change things around to become a new, sober person that has the ability to achieve anything in life in general. And always question yourself, are you reasoning right now clearly? Is your addiction pulling you? Are your emotions affecting you? Are your opinions right now correct, or are you being deceived either by the outside world, by someone else, or by yourself? Are you self-deceiving yourself by not changing your opinions and being too stubborn about things? Start thinking about your actual reasoning, because it's your most important faculty. It's more important than your eyes and your vision or your hearing or your ability to speak. If you can think clearly and reason correctly, you start to become a completely different person, and people will be in awe of you. Because reasoning, it's almost like a seed, where you could have a tiny little seed and it looks like nothing, but if it's thrown into the right type of soil, it'll suddenly unfurl itself and grow and develop itself into a large plant in a large living organism. And reasoning is very similar to that. It seems like it's nothing, but if you actually take the time to work on yourself and make sure that your reasoning is clear and correct and you're doing it in the right way and you're focusing on the right things, people might not notice that you're doing that. That's all something that you're working on yourself on internally. But over time, that's going to grow and develop, and suddenly people are going to see a massive change in you, a change that will bear fruit for you in all sorts of ways in life. But in order to reason clearly, you need to first get sober, because how can you be reasoning clearly if you're being pulled by addiction, if it's clouding your judgments? The further away you get from that grip of addiction, the more clearly you're going to be able to reason, and the more you're going to change. You're going to start to carry yourself in a different way, and you're going to start speaking differently. And people are going to notice that. Even your language will start to change. I know that for myself because I used to do social media when I would get high on YouTube and show off that I was smoking as a doctor. And at that time, the way I was behaving was very different from the sober self that I am today. And it's not just the sobriety, it's also the way that I think about my reasoning. I now make it a priority for myself to be constantly improving my ability to think clearly and to communicate clearly and to make the right opinions and the right judgments and to use the tools of philosophy to determine if I'm doing the right things or the wrong things, if I'm thinking about things correctly or incorrectly, or if I'm just uncertain and suspending my judgment about that. So that's the main things we're going to talk about today. And one last thing is that if you apply reason to the difficulties in life, whether it's your addiction or any difficulty you have, and you change yourself into the person I'm describing, and you have any difficulty, if you use the reason correctly, then you can turn even the hardest situations, you can soften them. You can make them easier to deal with. And if something seems like it's very narrow in life, you can start to widen that window. And you can widen it out and find other options out there. You can take advantage of the obstacles in your way even. You might think in such a way that not only are you not concerned about a difficulty, but you're actually excited by the difficulty because you see the positives in it and you can take advantage of it somehow. And things that once felt so heavy for you will start to feel lighter on your shoulders. So get sober so you can start reasoning correctly, and use stoicism to help you get sober. And get sober so you can become more stoic too. I'll see you guys at the next video. I know this wasn't an easy subject, but hopefully you got something out of it. And I know if you even got a little bit out of this, you got a lot out of it. So see you guys next time. Take care.